Hello, everyone, and welcome to Atlantic Council live from COP26. My name is Randy Bell, and I'm the director of the Global Energy Center at the Atlantic Council. And I just want to say that we are here at the Climate Action Solution Center with a really great audience of probably 30 people who have been part of a program of discussions on energy and the energy transition all day here at the Climate Action Solution Center. Now we're going to have some of the similar conversations in a live format for all of you out in YouTube land to watch. First, a few updates from the COP today. So first, this morning, the Asian Development Bank announced its new energy transition mechanism with up to $3.5 billion in initial funding to purchase coal plants in Asia and retire them early. The initial priority countries will be Indonesia, the Philippines, and Vietnam. This is a big deal. Also, Mark Carney, former Bank of England governor, spoke at the COP earlier today and said that the world has reached a watershed moment with $130 trillion of private capital now available to leverage for the global transition towards decarbonizing technologies. He added that, quote, right here, right now is where private finance draws the line. Now, we're going to be having financial conversations at the Climate Action Solution Center tomorrow, so please watch live from COP tomorrow for more on that. Now, yesterday, Special Presidential Envoy for Climate John Kerry and Romanian President Klaus Iohannis announced Romania's intent to build a first-of-a-kind U.S. small modular reactor plant. The State Department noted that Romania is taking an initial step, but a huge technological leap in advancing climate action and clean energy access throughout a critical part of Europe and the world. This will be a first-of-a-kind technology commercialized. It's really remarkable. So we're now privileged to hear from two U.S. government officials to announce a new initiative that will further the cause of international civil nuclear cooperation. So building on the announcement yesterday, with the United States leading the way on this. It's really remarkable. So we have two pre-recorded videos coming to us from Ambassador Bonnie Jenkins, Undersecretary for Arms Control and International Security at the U.S. Department of State, followed by another pre-recorded video from Diane Farrell, the Acting Deputy Undersecretary for International Trade at the U.S. Department of Commerce. Then after these two videos, we will come back here live for a conversation on that. So over to the videos.
Good evening and greetings from Washington. It's a pleasure for me to join you virtually. I hope to be able to see and meet with you in person soon. I want to thank the Atlantic Council's Jennifer Gordon and Terra Praxis Christy Gogan for this opportunity. And I would like to welcome all of my foreign counterparts and colleagues. Your presence here is a testament to our teamwork and to these important issues. On Monday and Tuesday, we all paid close attention to the commitments and initiatives President Biden and other foreign leaders announced. Now, I'd like to address the critical role nuclear power can play in our shared decarbonized future. Together, we are charting a path to limit warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius this decade and achieve net zero emissions by 2050. From day one, President Biden has made it clear that addressing the climate crisis is at the center of U.S. foreign policy. Each and every part of the U.S. government has been tasked with advancing climate action, and I'm happy to be part of that effort. As Undersecretary for Arms Control and International Security, I am working to promote the responsible use of nuclear technology as a tool of mass decarbonization. That's one point I want to keep in mind. Nuclear energy is a critical climate solution. We know now that we must accelerate our energy transition away from fossil fuels and rapidly deploy zero-carbon technologies. Advanced nuclear energy technologies are well suited to this task. The challenge at hand is significant. We must deploy the full range of clean energy technologies available, including nuclear energy, over the next decade and beyond. To this end, the Biden-Harris administration maintains the United States' decades-long commitment to advancing nuclear energy, which is a critical enabler for a climate solution. For many countries, nuclear energy is the right solution at the right time. It can not only address climate change, but also help them meet their economic development and energy security goals. Further, nuclear energy can play a critical role in decarbonizing hard-to-abate sectors beyond electricity. For example, nuclear energy offers a cost-competitive, zero-carbon production source for clean hydrogen, industrial process heat, and desalinized water that can help us meet our decarbonization goals, air quality standards, and clean water needs. One issue that will determine speed of our success is how we finance the development of clean energy, including nuclear power. I welcome the recent news that the United Kingdom will now apply financing rules for its nuclear development that will make such investments more attractive. We need the finance industry to step up with the capital beyond what governments can provide to build our clean power sector. To that end, I hope that the European Union will respond to the overwhelming demand of its member states by including nuclear in its sustainable finance taxonomy. Unlocking these benefits will get us closer to achieving net zero by 2050. I am therefore delighted that Special Presidential Envoy for Climate Change Kerry jointly announced yesterday with Romanian President Iohannis that the United States will partner with Romania for a first-of-a-kind deployment of small modular nuclear reactors, also called SMRs, for energy generation. SMRs are one essential new technology that will allow for clean energy generation, and they are particularly well suited for replacing coal plants. SMRs offer lower costs, more scalability and flexibility, and the ability to complement other clean energy sources. They are, as their name suggests, smaller than traditional reactors and can be deployed to match the specific needs of a country's power grid. In some designs, additional units can be added over time if energy demand and transmission capacity grow. Investing in SMRs creates good-paying jobs in host countries and offers the ability to scale up quickly as demand dictates. I hope that other countries will join Romania's and our efforts to find smart uses for SMRs in their clean energy and decarbonization strategies. Deploying U.S. SMR technology in Romania first is an initial step, but a huge technological leap that will advance climate action, energy security, and energy access across Europe and around the world. All these technologies hold great promise, and more are on the horizon. The United States can always assure its partners that U.S. technologies are designed, developed, built, and used under the highest standards of safety and security and non-proliferation. These standards make international collaboration possible without raising the risk of security or proliferation. In support of these goals, I am honored to reaffirm the United States' commitment to supporting energy innovation. This will facilitate our global clean energy transition in a smart, cost-effective, and secure way. Working together with Congress, we are increasing our support to global partners who are considering the incorporation of modern and emerging nuclear energy generation technologies as a means to curb high-emission power generation. I am pleased to announce today our Nuclear Futures Package. This package will provide $25 million in support of expanding access to clean nuclear energy, including both ongoing programs and projects under development. This package includes activities by departments and agencies throughout the U.S. government through 5 lines of effort. First, we are advancing clean nuclear baseload generation under the highest standards for security, safety, and non-proliferation. Here, I would like to highlight the work we are doing with Poland. We are assisting Poland in its efforts to transition away from coal power plants, establish baseload clean power generation, and strengthen its energy security. To that end, we are pleased to support a front-end engineering and design, or FEED, study. This study, conducted by U.S. nuclear engineering companies, will help Poland to move forward with its plans to develop over 6 gigawatts of clean, baseload nuclear energy. Through deployment of large-scale nuclear power plants, Poland will significantly contribute to the global effort to reduce carbon emissions and to transition to a clean energy system. Second, we are demonstrating the power of nuclear-produced hydrogen fuel to power clean energy and decarbonization transitions. Here, we are pleased to announce our cooperation with Ukraine to conduct a pilot hydrogen production, storage, and utilization project using high-temperature electrolysis for nuclear power. Achieving global climate goals requires new and innovative approaches to decarbonization. We will need to decarbonize hard-to-abate sectors, for example, by cleanly producing steel and cement or shipping goods on zero-carbon cargo ships. Clean hydrogen produced with a nuclear energy is a promising technology for meeting such demands. Hydrogen is a critical component of the clean energy transition, and this supports Ukraine's goal of becoming a leader in hydrogen production and storage to meet its ambitious emissions reduction commitments. Third, we are advancing new and innovative nuclear technologies. In 2020, we concluded a U.S.-Romania intergovernmental agreement for cooperation on the civil nuclear power sector in Romania. Today, I am pleased to announce that we will expand our cooperation by establishing an SMR simulator at one of Romania's scientific research centers. This simulator will support Romania's goals to become a leader in SMR deployment and an SMR educational and training hub in the region, so that Romania's SMR deployment will be the first of many more to come. In addition, we are excited to advance Romania's goals through support for an SMR sitting study, a regulatory workshop, a reverse trade mission, and joint deployment of a U.S.-Romanian SMR work plan. Fourth, we are fostering regulatory harmonization of new technologies so that technologies deployed in one country can quickly commercialize elsewhere and enjoy economies of scale. We are pleased to announce cooperation through a U.S. Trade and Development Agency-funded workshop series entitled Small Modular and Advanced Reactor Standards and Regulations Workshop Series. This series is part of the Department of Commerce's Small Modular Reactor Public-Private Program. It is designed to facilitate discussions on regulatory environments and licensing for advanced reactors, financing, and climate and clean energy goals. By addressing a key step necessary for the deployment of emerging technologies, these workshops help to support countries' ambitious clean energy targets. Finally, we are building capacity to access clean nuclear power. We are doing this through our new program at the Department of State, the Foundational Infrastructure for the Responsible Use of Small Modular Reactor Technology, or FIRST initiative. This was launched as President Biden's Leaders Summit on Climate last April. FIRST builds on more than 60 years of U.S. innovation and expertise in nuclear energy and provides capacity building support to partner countries exploring options to meet their clean energy needs in a manner consistent with the highest international standards of nuclear safety, security, and non-proliferation. The United States is pleased to announce FIRST partners Kenya and Indonesia, as well as regional FIRST projects with 5 ASEAN and 5 sub-Saharan African partners. Each FIRST engagement is tailored to the individual partners' identified priorities and supports their goals for establishing a responsible nuclear power program. The United States is also announcing new clean energy partnerships with current nuclear energy producing states, including Brazil, that are looking to expand their nuclear energy sector securely, safely, and responsibly. While I am not able to be there in person, members of our State Department team are on the ground with you. This includes International Security and Non-Proliferation Senior Advisor Justin Friedman and Europe and Eurasia's Assistant Coordinator Jim Kulikowski. I hope you will seek them out this evening to explore how we can cooperate together. Decarbonization is a global imperative and our shared challenge. I hope you will look to the safe, secure use of clean nuclear energy as an essential tool to address the climate crisis. The United States stands ready to support your efforts. Thank you.
Good evening. I would like to underscore Commerce's appreciation to Jennifer Gordon at the Atlantic Council and Christy Gogan at Terra Praxis for organizing this important event on the margins of the 26th United Nations Climate Change Conference of the Parties. As Acting Undersecretary for International Trade at the U.S. Department of Commerce, I recognize that addressing the climate crisis is as much an economic challenge as it is a scientific one. Today, we face a pressing need to create new technologies, new markets, and a new clean economy. As Fatih Birol and our Secretary Raimondo noted during President Biden's Climate Leaders Summit in April, 45% of reductions needed to achieve global targets must come from technologies that are not fully developed today, such as small modular reactors, or SMRs, and advanced reactors. That's why it's so important that we strengthen our collaboration on this issue based on shared values, fair competition, free flow of information, and open markets. The Nuclear Futures Basket that Ambassador Jenkins just announced is truly impressive. It includes the Small Modular Reactor Public-Private Program, or SMR PPP initiative, which is led by Commerce with funding and participation by other agencies and industry. Under the program, we are working with industry and our European counterparts to achieve our ambitious SMR deployment goals. Just last month, we worked with our partners in Romania and the U.S. Trade and Development Agency to hold a workshop to promote SMR technologies throughout Europe. We are excited to announce that we have expanded the SMR PPP initiative to Eurasia and will hold a similar workshop in December with Ukraine, in addition to trade missions and events planned throughout 2022. We are also exploring the potential to expand the SMR PPP initiative to other regions in the world. Commerce believes that transatlantic cooperation on SMRs and many other areas of the green economy is vital to help achieve U.S. and global decarbonization goals. ITA's Global Markets Unit, including the U.S. and Foreign Commercial Service and Industry and Analysis Unit, are working together to advance these priorities both domestically and internationally. Critical to this work are ITA's strategic partnerships with industry partners such as the Nuclear Energy Institute and U.S. Nuclear Industry Council and the ITA SMR Industry Working Group, which last year included 26 private sector members. We have worked closely with U.S. SMR designer NuScale and Romanian state-owned utility Nuclear Electrica SNN, and fully support and commend their exciting plans for near-term, first-of-a-kind deployment of SMRs in Romania. We encourage the European Commission to include nuclear in its sustainable finance taxonomy and its many Green Deal initiatives. To fully harness this critical next generation of nuclear technology and facilitate scale, we will need to ensure supportive policy environments and joint approaches on both sides of the Atlantic and in third markets. By working together to foster industry-led open markets in clean energy technologies, the United States, the European Union and its member states, and other partners can forge a solution to the climate crisis. Together, we can write the rules of the road through regulatory, standards, licensing, and financing cooperation. We look forward to working with our European trading partners to create full and fair opportunities for all of our companies in the green economy. In conclusion, Commerce is proud to be a key player in working with our European and global trading partners to lead the world's transition to a carbon-free future. We look forward to future events and discussions to continue this important work. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jennifer Gordon, and I'm the Managing Editor and Senior Fellow at the Atlantic Council Global Energy Center. It is wonderful to be here this evening with all of you in person and to see so many friends again, and also fantastic to be live streaming out to a global audience. First of all, thank you so much to Undersecretary for Arms Control and International Security, Bonnie Jenkins from the U.S. Department of State, and to Acting Undersecretary of Commerce for International Trade, Diane Farrell. We are so honored that you chose to make this incredible announcement here with us today. For some commentary on the Nuclear Futures Gift Basket, I'd like to turn first to James Kolakowski, Coordinator of U.S. Assistance. And by the way, as I call your name, please come up and take a seat. James Kolakowski is the Coordinator of U.S. Assistance to Europe and Eurasia, Bureau of European and Asian Affairs. And next, I'm delighted to introduce Justin Friedman, Senior Advisor for Commercial Competitiveness in Nuclear Energy at the Bureau of International Security and Non-Proliferation, also United States Department of State. And for a global response, we are also thrilled to have representatives from some of the partner countries that were just announced and just mentioned. So first we have Cosmin Ghita, who is the CEO of Nuclear Electrica from Romania. And we're also honored to have come sit. Thank you. And we're also honored to have Engineer Andrew Kamau, Principal Secretary, State Department of Petroleum from Kenya. So let me start with you, Jim, just a few words, if I may. What does this mean for how you see U.S. assistance to the Eastern European and Central European region as well? And do you have a microphone, and can I pass you mine? Okay, there we go. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. I don't know that I've ever live streamed before, so this is a new experience for me, but we'll see how it goes, right? No, thank you, and thank the Atlantic Council and Terra Praxis for this event. The conversations throughout the day have been really, really incredible and informative. So it's been really a pleasure to be here, and thank you so much for letting me say a few words. And to join Undersecretary Jenkins from the State Department, Undersecretary Farrell from the Commerce Department, my colleague Justin Friedman from the State Bureau of International Security and Non-Proliferation. I think the remarks that have been made so far indicate that the U.S. commitment to our global clean energy goals and climate goals are whole of government. And it is the entire government that's really participating in this announcement and in these events. And that's one of the reasons I'm here, is to be part of that overall announcement. My office, the Assistance Coordinator for Europe, Eurasia, and Central Asia, has been around for about 30 years, since the fall of the Berlin Wall and since the collapse of the Soviet Union. Our mission has been and is to work with countries in the region to be free, democratic, prosperous, and to counter malign influence that seeks to hinder that movement or to undermine it. Energy is key in that progression, if you will. And it is one of the incomplete elements of that progression. Diversification, as we've seen even in the last few months, is truly fundamental. And so the principles that have been announced, clean, modern technology, nuclear technology, nuclear-produced hydrogen, innovative technologies like SMR are all applicable to the countries of the region. And each of them can really not only modernize, but really advance into the future and use this to sort of slingshot, if you will, into a new ability to use energy for their own development. So it should be no surprise that in part that the countries in the region are eager to participate in this initiative. And we're also pleased to participate in the initiative and to provide resources to help make it work. You've heard the countries that are really at the start of this initiative: Romania, Ukraine, Poland. In addition, we're doing some work with Bulgaria. And it has the ability to be truly transformative in this region. So as part of the US effort, but also on behalf of our own mission, we're really looking forward to working with the entire USG on this initiative and to the conversations with colleagues from across the region as we continue to shape our civil nuclear cooperation discourse and identify new ways in which the United States can support our climate goals in Glasgow and beyond. And thank you again for the opportunity to introduce our work and to underscore our commitment to clean nuclear energy as a modern solution to clean energy challenges. Thank you.
Jim, thank you so much. And let's quickly go to Justin to talk about commercial competitiveness in nuclear energy.
Great. Well, thank you very much. I have two confessions to make. Initially, I only had one in my prepared remarks, but the second confession is I'm a person who likes to talk with their hands. And so I feel very challenged today because one hand I have to hold the microphone, and the other hand I've got my notes for speaking. So bear with me as I deal with this new challenge. A good evening, everyone. It's a real pleasure, and it's an honor for me to speak to this forum, especially after Undersecretary Bonnie Jenkins and Undersecretary of Commerce Farrell, to discuss a real challenge and an opportunity for us to address the decarbonized future and to achieve our shared climate goals. I want to thank the Atlantic Council and Terra Praxis for creating a wonderful opportunity and a forum here today for us to discuss these issues in depth. It's been a wonderful program, and thank you for having us with you. I am excited, as in my role as senior advisor at the Department of State, to work on directly this nuclear futures package that Bonnie Jenkins talked about in her remarks. I'm not going to go over what she said. I think it's all there. Please rewatch it on Rewind if you need to get more details, or for those here in the room, Jim and I would be happy to discuss them in further detail, along with our colleagues Endrit Demi and Kirsten Cutler, who are the real experts. Jim and I are just the pretty faces on stage today. So my other confession also comes with a challenge for you. My confession is I am a recovering hydrocarbonaholic. I have spent a good chunk of my diplomatic career working on energy security issues related to the transport and diversification of supply for natural gas and petroleum. Spent a good time doing Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan oil pipeline, culminating in my last assignment in Bulgaria, where I worked on the spur to that natural gas pipeline out of the South Caucasus, the interconnector Greece-Bulgaria. So big successes, but we've been talking today about the need to get rid of hydrocarbons in our economy. So I have to recover from that past experience. But that job and that challenge were driven by a strategic logic that I think still holds true today. And that logic is diversity. Diversity of supplies, diversity of routing to achieve energy security for our European allies and for the US and the world. So how does diversity relate to what we're talking about today? Nuclear power is a key component to decarbonization, and it complements. It doesn't substitute for, it doesn't replace, but it complements renewables. I'm from California. I love renewables. My mother has had for the past 15 years a photovoltaic solar cell panel on her roof, and she used it to sell power to the California grid. And later, when she got an electric car, I won't say which brand, she used it to charge her car. So I believe in renewables as well. But the logic and the economics and the financing all tell us that we need a multiplicity of sources in order to make this decarbonization work. And nuclear power, advanced nuclear power, driven by leading edge US technology, is one of the ways to get to where we need to go. And so it's an honor for me to join the stage to share that thought. I'm not going to use the rest of my remarks because I've said it all. But the main point I want to share with you is the challenge, and repeat it, that we need to pursue diversity as we develop our decarbonized future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Justin. And again, let's very quickly go to you, Cosmin, and how you see this agreement and the nuclear energy futures basket.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Terra Praxis and Atlantic Council, as well as all the distinguished guests for this wonderful event. I'm really excited to be here. I mean, letting aside the fact that I started learning English by watching The Simpsons and learning more about nuclear power through that avenue, leaving that aside, that's to learn how not to implement nuclear power. I've been incredibly fortunate to be in this position at Nuclear Electrica in Romania at a time, and it's such an exciting time when we're seeing advancement of these technologies come into play. And I truly believe this is the future. This will be, we're investing right now in a new generation at Nuclear Electrica. We hired 500 and almost 500 new employees, so having a generational change, and these will be the new technologies that they will be operating. And dovetailing off the great experience that we've been having in Romania to operating traditional nuclear power, which is a great baseload for a clean energy mix. And we're expanding on that. I think the modularity and possibility of load following that small modular reactors are here. And we've developed a partnership with NuScale thanks to the insights provided through the study that USDDA funded for us. We came to realize that the future of our grids and our economies will heavily depend on this technology. On one end, if you think about energy, well, we all know energy security. So it's a matter of how do you provide electricity to maintain not only your security systems but also your day-to-day lives. And we're having more and more consumption. If I'm looking just at the number of iPhones that are going around in this room right now, so it's clear that I bored everyone, I'll be very short. But at the same time, if we think about bringing in renewables, reducing CO2 footprints, they will need complementarity in terms of load following and maintaining grids. Lastly, as we're having coal facilities come out and our strategies to replace one of these existing coal sites or to replace it with a small modular reactor, actually you give a new life to a community that has already a standard of excellence in producing energy. And you already have supply chains that are easily reconverted. And actually the EU does a great job in financing professional reconversion. So we, without putting more onerous or on the grid, actually by giving it a little bit of relief. So we see this partnership as being critical to the decarbonization, to our company's future and the new generation. And we look forward to seeing the training facility that will be developed in Romania, so we can train our new operators on a new technology, and to see what other exciting projects the future will have. But we'll be more than happy to support anyone and share our experience that as we accumulated. And we're excited to be at the forefront of this innovation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Cosmin. And finally, Andrew, I'd like to go to you. Since Kenya was, I believe, the first country mentioned in that first initiative by Undersecretary Jenkins. So how do you, kind of from a broad perspective, how do you view this new cooperation between the United States and Kenya?
Thank you very much. I think first I'd like to thank TerraPraxis and the Atlantic Council. And Charles, thank you very much for allowing us to use this beautiful property of yours. It's been a very interesting day. The fact that everyone is still awake and we started pretty early means it's been an exciting discussion, in some cases, no holds barred. I think this announcement that was just made now is very welcome. I think one of the things that we've been talking about the whole day was trying to diversify energy sources that are there. You know, we are very fortunate that we do have solar, we have wind, and we have geothermal, and we have hydro, and now adding nuclear to this arsenal that we have for decarbonization of our economy. One of the things that it's not just energy for energy's sake. I mean, we only have 3 gigawatts of generation. So we are the beginning of our industrialization journey. And unlike most of Europe and the US that have invested billions of dollars in infrastructure that is based around fossil fuels, we don't have that. So it's really incumbent on on technology, on financing, to try and help African countries put it together an architecture that's green and start from there. It's really important that we do this. If we don't, the alternatives are Africa is well endowed in coal, oil and gas. It'll be an easy way for us to go. But we have to add good jobs, good manufacturing jobs, housing, and bring dignity to the people of our country. So thank you very much, and we really welcome this initiative.
Andrew, thank you so much. And thank you so much to all of our speakers for your fabulous remarks. I'd really be remiss if I didn't also take a moment and thank Kirsten Cutler and Endrit Demi of the U.S. State Department, Jonathan Cheesebro at the U.S. Department of Commerce, and Carl Kress at the U.S. Trade and Development Agency. Our next segment is with Kirsty Goggin, co-founder of TerraPraxis, and she will be talking with her panelists about ensuring access in the energy transition. So let's welcome our speakers to rejoin the audience, and Kirsty, over to you.
Thank you so much. Huge thanks to the Atlantic Council for hosting this extraordinary event, and actually to the whole CASC team for this wonderful opportunity to convene such an extraordinary group. President Nasheed and Mr. Foster, may I invite you to join us? Oh, so it's my pleasure to welcome two really distinguished, wonderful leaders and representatives from their countries, President Nasheed from the Maldives, and Jerome Foster II, who's, I think, the youngest ever appointee to advise the White House, and you're an advisor on climate justice. So congratulations, that's awesome. So I'd like to start with you, President Nasheed, if I may, and really ask, what is your perspective, following these extraordinary announcements that we've heard today from the US government to provide support to increase resilience to climate impacts, to build economic prosperity and growth, and of course contribute very importantly towards decarbonization. What is your perspective on the role that developed countries like the United States should play in supporting climate vulnerable countries like the Maldives in adapting and responding to climate?
Well, thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to speak to you again. We did nothing to the planet, the people of the Maldives, and many, many other poorer countries did almost nothing to damage the planet. But the brunt of the bad weather, we face it. We are in the front line, and we are facing it now. We feel that there is a moral argument for us to reach out to richer countries for assistance. But at the same time, I don't necessarily want to frame climate change language in anti-colonial language. You did not invent the internal combustion engine to murder me. You wanted a good life. You wanted to eradicate disease. You wanted to live happily. But then we found out that while you were doing that, you were also damaging the planet, and with that, we are losing our livelihood. Right now, we live in a planet of 1.2 degrees, and the winds are stronger, the waves are higher. There's coastal erosion in the Maldives in almost every single island. Our water is contaminated. Our reefs are bleached. We're losing our biodiversity. Therefore, we are losing our fishery industry. we are losing a livelihood, we are losing a community, we are losing a nation, we are losing a country. And I think, therefore, to rapidly decarbonize the planet is urgent. We must make sure that temperature doesn't rise above 1.5 degrees. To achieve that, we have to open up the arsenal of technology of everything. I come from a generation that had fought against nuclear and that has marched for CID, that has marched for a free planet, a planet free from nuclear war and nuclear power. But now I'm having to ask this question. We cannot hand over this planet to the next generation as we found it. So we have to therefore question, do we want to destroy the planet, or do we think about a little bit of uranium leak? I mean, I understand that it's, it will be said it's going to be very, very safe. All the legislations, all the regulations, everything would be good. Yes, and it would be probably better than the previous reactors that we've heard about and we've known. But we now have to embrace this new technology. And we now have to make use of the opportunities that we have. And therefore, it is refreshing to see the United States assisting Kenya and other countries in decarbonizing and finding alternative sources of energy. I think it's a happy day for me. I would say that we are on the brink of another industrial revolution that would be of clean energy. And if we cannot embrace the new technology, you cannot be the leaders of tomorrow. If you want to lead, you have to embrace the new technology. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So, to another leader of tomorrow, can you tell us about what is the White House in particular doing to augment international cooperation to support decarbonization of our global economy, but also to deliver climate justice?
Yeah, absolutely. And just to preface, I'm a White House climate advisor. I don't speak on behalf of the White House, but my words are my own. And just to start out, what the White House must do to make sure that they are the leaders of tomorrow and actually ushering in that new era of clean energy, we have to first fulfill the Green Climate Fund. When President Biden signed on to be a part of the Paris Climate Accords again, that also meant that he has a responsibility to fully fund the $100 billion that is owed to countries that have been at the front of the climate crisis, that did little to cause this crisis, but are being impacted first and worse. It is countries that are rich, countries that have perpetuated a climate crisis, that must be the pioneers of making sure that that pollution burden isn't so heavy on those that did nothing to cause this. And I think that in order for America to do that, they must first act nationally to make sure that communities are safe here, and also simultaneously act around the globe to make sure everyone else is safe. Because world leaders protect everyone. Leaders protect communities, and that's what the United States has to do.
That's great. And climate impacts are already here. Your country is particularly exposed already to climate impacts, as we know, and this was only, compounded by the recent pandemic. How can we create resilience against these future shocks and against these impacts that we're already experiencing?
We have to rely more on nature, and we have to find nature-based solutions. Not fight nature, but live with it. Instead of building a hard embankment, a concrete revetment, and a water breaker to protect our shorelines, we must be thinking of growing a reef implanting a mangrove, which is also far cheaper than the hard engineering. And to find a resilient community, a resilient society, you need to have projects that would be environmentally sustainable, and you need to have an economy that would give you prosperity, but through a low carbon strategy. We need to find a strategy that would give you the same economic outcomes, but through less extraction and more recycling. When the pandemic came, everyone knew that this was a disaster, an emergency, and so therefore everyone acted accordingly and did bring in measures to overcome that. Shauna, speaking in the panel recently, said they produced the vaccine in no time. I mean, last week we heard about a vaccine against malaria, and they've been trying on it for 100 years because it wasn't an emergency. But for Kenya, it is an emergency. Now we have a vaccine for malaria. That was killing more people than COVID ever did or ever probably will. But when the virus came to rich countries, they had to find it. So this is so sad to say. When your roof falls down on your head, you will then find solutions. We don't have the science. We don't have the technology, the know-how, the capacity, and the money to come up with the solutions. So even if our roof falls down on our head, we'll just have to find another way of sleeping, or we will die. But what I'm seeing now is that it is having an impact on everyone. Apparently, 1 in 3 of each American during the last 3 years were affected by bad weather. 200 people died of flash floods in Germany, in Belgium. Tundra is burning. Poland is burning. There's flood, there's fire, there's high wind. The planet is losing its balance. And it's really quite obvious now to see that we cannot go business as usual. We have to mend our ways. And so it's very refreshing to see the United States coming up with assistance in this kind of technology and in breakthroughs. Thank you.
Fantastic. So we need to start acting like it's an emergency. What does that look like for the United States to start acting like we're in a climate emergency? And how do we reconcile the need for climate justice to protect the most vulnerable people and ensure that they're not losers in any action that we take, but also that we actually deliver the change, we deliver the transition that we need?
Absolutely. When we talk about how America must actually be the leaders of the climate justice movement, it means that we have to do 4 main things. Both nationally looking inward, we have to first end the subsidies of fossil fuel industry. If we want to have an honest conversation about the transition away from fossil fuels into clean energy, it has to be commercially competitive, because in the United States, solar is cheaper than coal. But our tax dollars are going to subsidizing a fuel that is killing people. Why don't we subsidize something that saves lives? That's the first step. Next is to pass the fully funded $3.5 trillion infrastructure bill that would revolutionize how we tackle the climate crisis and fight for our future. That has billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars allocated to making sure that we, 1, invest in infrastructure, 2, make sure that our future is safe, and then reconcile with the past that is so tied to colonialism and racism and so many systems of oppression that continue to exacerbate the climate crisis today. That's what the infrastructure bill is all about. That's step 2. Step 3 is to stop the construction of coal-fired power plants. No, stop the construction, yes, of that too, and also of pipelines that go through indigenous communities. Just like the Line 3 pipeline that goes through 2,000 rivers in indigenous land, that is going to spill into their clean water reservoirs. And if we stop that and stop the construction of the North Brooklyn pipeline, of Line 3, and other pipelines like it, like Nord Stream 2 in EU, then we can actually have a footing to stand on. And then looking internationally, what we must do, and to be a leader, for America to say that they're a leader and to have reputation and recognition in that, is for them to look to other countries like the Maldives and say, we owe a debt. We owe a climate debt because we polluted, we destroyed, and it may have been unintentionally, but the damage is done. And we have to repay that. That's the step that America must do, and frankly, all high polluting countries must do to repay that damage that's been done over this past century.
Well, it's been a real honor to moderate this discussion. Thank you both so much for being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. So with that, thank you so much to Kirsty and our previous panelists. And I would like to have just a brief conversation about one of my favorite topics, which is new nuclear builds. And this is with two of my favorite speakers on nuclear, Kirsty Goggin, of course, and His Excellency Mohammed Al-Hamadi, the Managing Director and CEO of Emirates Nuclear Energy Corporation. So, Your Excellency, I would really like to start with you, and I would just like to ask, earlier this year, ENEC connected its second unit at Baraka to the power grid. Could you tell us more about what this means for the electricity sector in the UAE?
First of all, thank you for having me here, and I'm really humbled and honored to be here. The connection of the second unit to the grid will provide a clean and reliable and secure and safe energy to the nation. So by 2025, we'll have the 4 units connected to the grid, and that will provide 25% of electricity for the nation, and will avoid emitting around 21 million tons of CO2 emissions on an annual basis. And that's equivalent to around 3.2 million cars off the road on an annual basis. And that's something will create a cleaner and safe and reliable source of energy for the nation.
Thank you so much. And I know, Kirsty, this was one of the big themes today, but if you could you tell us just a little bit more about what nuclear can do in sectors beyond power?
Yeah, thanks so much. I'd love to do that. And you know, that carbon abatement that you just mentioned is really extraordinary. Just want to make that point. But yes, beyond the electricity sector, which is only 20% of our energy consumption, nuclear technologies could have an incredibly important role. And this is because of their particular characteristics. So nuclear technologies can not only deliver potentially very low cost power, but also produce heat, and actually quite high temperature heat. And the application, the combination of power and heat is incredibly useful for producing very large amounts of very low cost hydrogen. And that hydrogen, as many of you will know, is an absolutely core ingredient in many of the fuels, the clean, carbon neutral, or even carbon negative fuels that we need to produce for sectors that are currently really tough to decarbonize. And I'm thinking about aviation and shipping and industry, those tough to decarbonize sectors that we can't easily electrify, but which are really profoundly important to our global economy. So the combination of heat and power, but there's 2 other important factors. And one of those is that, you know, nuclear technology generates at a high capacity factor. And that's important because it means that you can actually deliver very low costs because you're using your infrastructure 90% or plus most of the time. And the other important detail is the tiny environmental footprint. And this is actually the thing as an environmentalist that first really kind of got me interested in nuclear technology, because the tiny environmental footprint enables us to do the things that we all care about, which is to protect nature and also drive prosperity and ultimately continuing to power our civilization without destroying it.
Thank you so much, Kirsty, for such thoughtful remarks. And Your Excellency, I'd like to ask you, you're an electrical engineer and you have an extremely realistic perspective on the clean energy transition. So in light of that, what do you expect to see in the next decade in the UAE energy sector and in the nuclear sector, and also globally in the energy transition? You know, that's a big question.
Thank you. Being as an engineer and being as a realist, we have to utilize the current technologies we have in hand. So nuclear has been there for over 40 years, and it's safe, secure, and reliable source of energy. And we have now renewable also have in the last 10 years dropped from a cost per kilowatt hour from 40 plus cents to around 1.5 to 1.6 cents. And this is a true project. This has been executed in the UAE for around 1.2 gigawatts of energy. And we need to utilize those sources to maximize the benefit of the current technologies. And as Kirsty mentioned, the potential of future energies like hydrogen, smart SMR reactors, these are the future, and there's a lot we could do in utilizing the combination of resources, renewable, nuclear, hydrogen, and there will be breakthrough of technologies in the future. But what's important today is utilize the current technologies, and at the same time, open windows of all technologies, be open for all, to be agnostic from a technology point of view, whatever will be safe, clean, and reliable, and cost-effective. That will open the pave the way for the success of saving the environment, climate change, at the same time growing those industries. And today, UAE has renewable, nuclear, and also we are also utilizing gas to power our electricity and economy. And having the combination of multiple sources, it gives you that flexibility and agility to be able to go to run a reliable grid. And if I may just add another point, a grid reliability is very, very important. There's no price tag, by the way, for energy security when it comes to a grid. Nobody will pay for that. That's government responsibilities. But having a combination of different sources of energies and in a stable and reliable manner and a stable grid, that will pave the way for the future. And I would like also to congratulate the US government and also my colleagues in Romania of having this collaboration. The Romanians are Cernavoda is one of the best operators, by the way, in the world as per the WANO. And that's something will pave the way also for the future development of the new reactors in Europe and also in the US.
Thank you, Your Excellency, and thank you so much for bringing us back to this announcement that we heard earlier in the hour from the U.S. government. So, Kirsty, I'd actually like to go back a little bit, and in light of that announcement, I'd like to ask you, how do you think that other potential new-to-nuclear countries view the range of possibilities that nuclear can offer?
Yeah, that's so awesome, and I agree. It's really exciting to see these developments in all of these countries, and particularly for the non-power applications, and also for the small modular reactors that offer a very different opportunity for financing, moving much more towards a manufactured-based, product-based approach, as opposed to the traditionally very large, capital-intensive project-based approaches, which have been quite challenging, as we know. Having said that, the UAE really is a gold standard when it comes to new-to-nuclear countries, demonstrating that success is entirely achievable, and that's thanks to a combination of strategic intent and real sort of determination and paying attention to what has worked elsewhere, and then really delivering against that. So it's very achievable. But what's very interesting, I think, is the broad range of applications for new to nuclear countries and delivery models. We're looking, for example, at shipyard manufactured production platforms, which could be sited offshore and which can produce not only power that can be cabled into shore, but also hydrogen-based fuels and desalinated water, and even protein. So actually, for developing countries interested in growing their economies, but and delivering this range of services, there's an opportunity to really think quite creatively about delivering these technologies in a way that doesn't even require several terrestrial infrastructure projects to be built and financed on land. So really interesting, innovative opportunities here. But looking at the opportunities that we've heard announced by the State Department today for hydrogen production, for SMRs, I think this is, I'll be watching with a great deal of interest, and, congratulations, and wish you all success.
Kirsty, thank you so much. And I want to stay with this theme of emerging nuclear countries. So if we believe that the global market for nuclear energy could triple by 2050, Your Excellency, what sort of advice, what words of wisdom do you have for other countries that are looking to begin this path and this travel down this road?
Thank you, Jennifer. That's a great question. So, talking from experience and what they've done in the UAE, having a clear policy and a consistent policy when it comes to energy, that's the only way for success. So having that policy adopted and led by the leadership of the country and cascaded all the way down, building nuclear power plants and building nuclear industry is like a marathon. It takes years and takes consistent commitment for a nation to go through, from human capital development, legislation development, and then building the infrastructure. It takes time, it takes effort, and a coordinated effort. And that's only two ways to do it, is through a clear, and consistent and transparent policy. And that's what the UAE did. In 2008, the government have published the UAE policy paper on how we will develop the nuclear power plants and what's the legislation that the government will lay out, establishing a strong regulator and establishing industry throughout, from education, industry development, and we've fulfilled all our commitments that we've committed to the world, to the IEA, and also to our all friendly nations that we work together with. And that takes a lot of commitment and effort. We've been working with the US government in developing some of the capabilities in joint cooperation. And that paid dividends to both to the UAE and also to the US when it came opening up business opportunities and also success. And today, I could humbly say that today, our success in the UAE could be replicated for other nations. And we always invite others to come and join the program in the UAE and see the capabilities that we've developed together with other nations.
Your Excellency, thank you so much for your wise thoughts and insights. And Kirsty, thank you as well. And now I'm going to turn to you to introduce our final speaker, and then Randy is going to wrap up at the very end. So over to you, Kirsty.
Gosh, thank you. Well, now it's my final honor of the day to introduce I guess the world's most famous climate scientist and really the godfather of climate change, Dr. James Hansen. Dr. Hansen, are you able to hear us?
Can you hear me?
Muted. Oh, yes. Oh, it's so great to see you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Sure, it's my pleasure.
So, Dr. Hansen, we've been spending the day at the Climate Action Solution Center attempting to have a version of COP26 where we actually make progress.
Well, that's good.
Really, yeah, it's really in your honor. Would you like to speak to our audience here? And I don't know if you wanted to share any slides or if you're
yes. Yeah, in fact,
okay.
do you have my PowerPoints, I hope?
Okay, everyone's nodding, so that's good news. Yes, here we are.
Okay. So you, great.
Thank you.
Okay, so the first question is, what is the correct title for my remarks today? You know, I'm getting an echo. I guess that doesn't matter. I can deal with it. But is the correct title Scaling Up Our Response to Climate Change as listed in the program? Or could I have the next slide? Is it Conference of the Pretenders? Only time will tell. History provides reason to be skeptical. Could I have the next one? Some of the COPs have ended up with self-congratulations, and for sure, these meetings were useful. Could I have the next chart? But the results are always the same in one sense. Global emissions continue to rise. Next chart. And there's a good reason for that. The world needs energy to raise living standards. And 80% of the energy is coming from fossil fuels. So emissions of CO2, the chart on the right, continue to rise. Next chart. The result is that atmospheric CO2 is now well into the dangerous range, and but we keep adding more CO2 and other greenhouse gases. At the time of the Paris Agreement, there was a scenario, RCP 2.6, that would keep global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. But the world is way overshooting that scenario. Now, there is no chance whatever of cutting emissions fast enough to keep warming to 1.5 degrees or less. That goal is now out of reach, and our governments should stop pretending that it is still possible. Could I have the next chart? So why is it not possible? Because of realpolitik and real politics. Realpolitik by itself assures that we will pass 1.5 degrees warming, because governments must keep the lights on. And countries like China and India and Indonesia, they will raise their living standards. That's not negotiable. And in addition, we have the problem of real politics, and that is bad governance. Bribery of governments by special interests, which results in ineffectual policies. Things like heavy subsidies of solar panels and pretending that this will drive down emissions rapidly. I could have the next chart. The world needs energy, but we must reduce the carbon intensity, the carbon per unit energy, to near zero over the next several decades. And so far, the world has only reduced carbon intensity from 80% to a bit less than 70% over 50 years. The UK and Germany have got it down to a bit less than 60%. And a few countries have done much better by almost decarbonizing their electricity with the help of nuclear power. Sweden has done better than France, in part because Sweden uses electricity for heating. In the mid 1970s, it began building 10 nuclear power plants. But in addition, what we need to do is to Sweden and France to go closer to zero liquid fuels, to make liquid fuels from electricity, for example, hydrogen. High temperature industrial processes can be hydrogen enabled or employ modern nuclear power that produces high temperatures. Then we would be well on the way to a bright future for today's young people and future generations. Could I have the next chart? So we can still solve the climate and energy problem and obtain a bright future for young people. It requires two actions, neither of which is receiving needed attention at this conference. The crucial underlying requirement is a rising price on carbon to make the fossil fuel price honest. And secondly, there must be technology support for research, development, and demonstration. I could have the next chart. And that includes nuclear power. It's easy to implement an across-the-board carbon fee, collecting it from fossil fuel companies at domestic mines and ports of entry. And if 100% of this money is distributed equally to all legal residents, this yields a simple, transparent, market-based approach that spurs innovation. And fee and dividend is progressive. Wealthy people have a large carbon footprint and they will lose money. Most low-income people will make money. Economic studies show that this is the fastest way to phase down fossil fuel use. Could I have the next chart, please? So this fee and dividend spurs the economy, creates jobs, increases GNP, and increases government revenue. And fee and dividend is the one effective international approach. For example, if the US adopts a carbon fee, it would also impose border duties on products from countries that do not have an equivalent carbon fee, which is a big incentive for other countries to adopt a carbon fee so they can collect the money themselves. A growing carbon fee is the basic requirement to solve the climate problem. As long as fossil fuels do not pay their costs to society, we can't solve the problem. Could I have the next chart, please? Emerging economies will be the source of most future emissions. So we must work together with China, India, Indonesia, and other emerging economies. I could have the next chart. Those countries so far are not the cause of climate change. Global warming is proportional to cumulative emissions. And as yet, the West is still most responsible for climate change. Could I have the next chart? So we must cooperate. That's just common sense. We're all in the same boat and we're going to share the same fate. So we must encourage our governments to cooperate. We must work with our friends and colleagues in China. All of us love our children and grandchildren, and we want them to inherit a remarkable planet. Could I have the next chart? So let me close by criticizing both the German and the American governments. At the conference of the party or the pretenders, COP26, 20 years ago in Bonn, Germany used its position as host nation to make the Kyoto Protocol anti-nuclear. Could I have the next chart, please? Worse, they specifically recommended gas. So Germany chose gas over nuclear, and young people be darned. Gas is more than half as bad as coal. It's a bad path to send young people down. It means locking in fracking, pipelines, groundwater pollution, and greater climate change. Now, what's encouraging is that young people seem to get it, even if the government does not. Could I have the next chart, please? More than 350 college student government presidents, representing more than 4 million students, issued a statement in support of carbon fee and dividend. They want to follow the science. And next chart, even high school leaders agree. But what does the US government propose? It was still not entirely clear, but it seems that it wants to borrow several $100 billion from young people and use a lot of that money to blanket the country in solar panels and windmills. And by the way, I'm all in favor of these renewable energies. My barn, which I'm speaking from right now, is covered by solar panels. We generate more energy than we use. But that should be determined by the market. We shouldn't be borrowing money from future generations to subsidize something. Fee and dividend doesn't cost a cent. You collect the money from the fossil fuel industry and distribute it to the public, and it gives you the fastest way to phase down carbon emissions. One of the things that this will ensure, if we follow that subsidy path, is it's going to generate this real politics. You're going to get reaction on local scales and reactions from industry and such, so that it's not the fastest way to actually decarbonize. Could I have the next chart, please? So another thing that the reason I'm encouraged, I find that a majority of young people in colleges that I have spoken at, they support nuclear power, including, this is an example of this Good Energy Collective, which is recommending support for nuclear technologies. Now, there was a hint in something that you were saying just as I turned into your meeting, that there was some announcement, a positive announcement by the administration. So I'm curious about that. But one thing that I've seen is the Biden administration deleted from the 2022 budget support for the Versatile Test Reactor project, which doesn't make sense. We've got to support the new technologies that can decarbonize our energy systems. So yeah, so I'm very interested in to see what is actually going to happen in the next weeks, but it's still up in the air as to whether we're dealing again with a what did I call it on my first chart? The conference of the conference of the pretenders. Are we really going to solve this problem, or are we just going to continue on this path where emissions actually continue to go up after the COP meetings? So that's the end of my remarks. Thanks.
Dr. Hansen, thank you so much. It does remind me of when I had the honor of hosting a press conference with you at COP21 5 years ago in Paris. And we left that conference feeling optimistic, and soon after, in the weeks following, the atmospheric carbon emissions reached 400 parts per million and have continued to rise ever since. So, you know, maybe now we will take heed of your words, and we will all, you know, acknowledge the emergency that we're in and respond accordingly. And I do feel after today, I feel more optimistic actually that, things are changing. So thank you again so much for joining us.
Yeah, well, yeah, I was optimistic too then, but that's why I keep making graphs. As soon as the data comes in on temperature, on greenhouse gas amounts, on fossil fuel use, just graph it, because you have to look at reality. You can't just listen to what politicians are saying. We have to hold their feet to the fire.
It's the carbon intensity ultimately, and the gap between the ambition, the aspiration, and the reality is exactly what you're pointing to. So yes, thank you for doing that. Thank you. So I'll hand back now to Randy, if I may, to close us out. Many thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Dr. Hansen. Thank you, Kirsty. What we're seeing from these announcements over the past few days is there really is forward momentum on advanced nuclear technology. And it's great to see that the US is pushing forward on this. And in many ways, this may be the most pro-nuclear COP, at least coming from the United States. There's some others who may not be pro-nuclear inside the main tent, but what the U.S. is doing is really fantastic, and at least is pointing in the right direction. And so I really want to congratulate our U.S. colleagues for that, and also those colleagues who are working with us on this. And then we should see some U.S.-UK cooperation as well, and we can really get things done. I want to thank you all for tuning in today to Atlantic Council Live from COP26. This concludes our program. I know it was a bit long, but it was full of stars and full of really interesting interviews, conversations, and announcements. So again, thanks for your participation. And again, congratulations to our colleagues at the U.S. State Department and the Department of Commerce, as well as the partner countries. Have a great evening, everybody, or mid-afternoon, wherever you are, or late night if you're watching farther east. And again, we will be back live tomorrow at 5 p.m. GMT. So until then, thank you very much.